Can the Oklahoma Sooners land the highly coveted 5-star linebacker in 2024, Sammy Brown? And I don't necessarily think it's completely out of question, but I do think it's kind of unlikely, but it's something I think we have to talk about and potentially discuss. Before we dive into it, please go ahead, hit that like and the subscribe button. Let me know what your all's thoughts are in the comments below. Do you think that Brent Venables and Ted Roof can pull out a miracle and land the 5-star linebacker out of Jefferson, Georgia? So Sammy Brown, the 5-star linebacker out of Jefferson, Georgia, 6'2", 2.5, 225 pounds. The dude's a monster, right? He's number 12 overall ranked player in the country, confirmed to the according to the 247 composite, and number 6 overall in the 247 rankings. When you look at Sammy Brown, right, he's got the size and he looks ready to be able to go out there and be a college football starter right away. And one of the things that you love about him is his explosive athleticism along with his elite speed. And this is the deal. Right now, if you're Oklahoma, you're on the outside looking in. Because when you look at the potential favorites, you're thinking Clemson, Georgia, Ohio State. Because when you look at the places he's taken visits to, he's taken visits to Clemson 6 times, most recently being on Clemson's junior day on January 28th. He's been to Georgia 5 times, most recently being there on the 5th of November. And then you have Tennessee and Ohio State tied at 3. Now, it's interesting because even though he's been to Ohio State 3 times, I don't think a lot of people are considering Ohio State to be just the destination. And then when you look at it coming in at number 2, or at 2 visits, you have Georgia Tech and South Carolina. Right behind it, you have Oklahoma, Auburn, Notre Dame, Alabama, Michigan, Florida, Michigan State, all at 1 visit. So you can tell he's trying to make his rounds to all of the elite schools with the 28 visits that he's taken. But why would the Sooners, of all teams, after a 6-7 season, potentially try to make a run at the 5-star linebacker and maybe have a shot, even though it's a long shot? Well, could it be that Brent Venables had landed a 5-star linebacker at Clemson and Barrett Carter? Or could it be the 4-star linebacker Jeremiah Trotter, who led the team in total tackles last year, and in his career has 104 total tackles, 59 solos, 14.5 sacks, 7.5 sacks, and 2 interceptions? And let's be honest, if he has another year like he had last year, he could potentially be a first-rounder. You could look at Austin Box, the 4-star linebacker from Oklahoma. In 3 seasons, had 106 total tackles, 12.5 total tackles for loss, and 2 interceptions. You could look at the 4-star linebacker from Ronell Lewis in Oklahoma, the 4-star linebacker at Clemson, Trey Lamar. Or maybe you could look at guys that he has in the NFL, or just guys that had incredible careers at Clemson. You could look at the 3-star linebacker at Clemson in 2016, that went number 8 overall in the 2020 NFL draft to the Arizona Cardinals, at 238 total tackles, 148 solos, 28.5 tackles for loss, 11 sacks, and 4 interceptions, Isaiah Simmons. Or maybe you could look at a guy on the current Oklahoma staff now that could be helping in recruiting these linebackers. James Skalski, the 3-star linebacker in that 2016 class, 258 total tackles, 132 solos, 18 tackles for loss, and 8.5 sacks. You can look at BV's production on the recruiting trail, and you can look at his production and what he's done for not even 5-star linebackers. Like, you look at what he's done for the 3-stars and go, if I'm a 5-star and I have the talent, BV being one of the best linebacker coaches in the country and having one of the best defenses in the country, he potentially could put me where I want to be. And maybe if all of that is not good enough, maybe you go look at the 6-7 Oklahoma team and what those linebackers did. Because you could look at Danny Stutzman having a career year with 124 total tackles, 70 solos, 3 sacks. Maybe you could even look at David Agwebu, a guy that for some reason Oklahoma Sooners hate. 109 total tackles, 56 solos, 2 sacks. Or Deshaun White, who you expect to be in the NFL draft this year. 90 total tackles, 43 solos, and 2 sacks. Right? You look at all of the linebackers that I even didn't talk about, that Venables has coached over his career. And why would Sammy Brown not give Oklahoma a look at that point? Again, not saying that this is a guy that is for sure going to be a Sooner, that we're feeling really confident in. But as I go through and I look at this class and I look at guys that, could be dark horses that Oklahoma potentially could be going after, I've told you guys Colin Simmons at the edge is one of them. And that's with the relationship that you have in your new wide receivers coach. But you could look at a guy like Sammy Brown, a 5-star linebacker. When was the last time Oklahoma landed a 5-star linebacker? I think, was it Buki? Because I know a lot of you guys will say Clayton Smith. Clayton Smith actually, according to the 247 composite, was a 4-star. So I don't know if he was a 5-star at one point, but he ended as a 4-star. And so I look at that and I go, I trust BV. And even if we don't get a Sammy Brown this year, maybe we get a Sammy Brown next year. Because Oklahoma was in the race, heavily in a race, for a 5-star linebacker in 2022 in Anthony Hill, who ultimately ended up at Texas. But for Oklahoma to be in these races and not really have any recent history to go off of, that has to instill confidence in you and me as the fan base to say that BV is going to be able to go out there and BV is going to be able to land some of the most elite recruits. I was looking at some of BV's top recruits of all time. And the list is impressive. Because he was a secondary on Brian Bresee. Or you could look at Ryan Washington, who is at Oklahoma. Or DeMarco Murray, who is a secondary, who, by the way, is on this staff as a coach. Or Christian Wilkins. Or Andrew Booth. Or Trenton Simpson, who actually, I didn't even mention Trenton Simpson, who was a 5-star linebacker at Clemson in the 2020 class. So, yeah, I mean, I look at everything that BV's done on the recruiting trail, on the field, and I like it. And I think Oklahoma, like I said, even though it's going to be a long shot, they could be a dark horse in this race. Sometimes the least you hear about a school in terms of recruit can be a good thing. So go ahead, jump in the comments below. Let me know what y'all's thoughts are. Do you think Oklahoma can land the 5-star linebacker Sammy Brown in the 2024 recruiting class? And if you haven't already, please go ahead, hit that like and the subscribe button because, listen, we're going to be bringing you guys lots of recruiting information as the 2024 recruiting cycle starts to heat up.